Come to the middle of Mark's Gospel is what I want to share from a little bit today. And the disciples are having to make a decision. When I was thinking about that, I was thinking about the decisions you and I have to make. And the decision we do make and what they mean for a lifetime. Especially where I'm at my point in life, I've been thinking about that, and that was raised for me a little bit. For those that don't know, back when I was in seminary days, when I grew up, I was growing up in the Missouri Synod, went through their school system. So as I was preparing for the seminary, especially my last year of college, I was at Indiana University, I was thinking back, there was about 12, maybe 15 professors and pastors and people who took an interest in me. And they all had a plan of where I should go to be a pastor. Different schools, different pathways, interesting journeys. But they all agreed on one thing. They said, don't go to that seminary in St. Louis. That is going to blow up. So, of course, I went to seminary in St. Louis. And while I thought many of them were probably reading the headlines too much and far enough distant that they really didn't understand what they were talking about, there was a separation. And there was a division that ended up in dividing not only Missouri Synod, but giving rise to what we now call the ELCA, is really a part of that. And in those days, part of things I remember is when I went there, the blessing of those people telling me that was I realized I may well have to make a decision, even though there's a clear path to ministry. There are some things going on that may put that in jeopardy. So in fact, I think I was on campus about 2 months when I suddenly realized I was faced with that decision. And I realized, if I take this path, then I can't, I'm going to make a decision here that could jeopardize everything I've been working for, praying about, preparing for. It could be the end of ministry. It could mean no further. You see, the things were divided. Not all that different from today. Not all that different from the biblical times of which we're reading about and which Mark and the disciples find themselves. And in their time, there was a clear line of thinking that just said, look, there's my way, and then everybody else is wrong. Seminary and the church, it said, look, this is the path you're going to take. This is the things you're going to believe, and if you don't, well, then you don't believe in God. And all the other people, the majority of the world, is obviously going to hell and doesn't believe in God, so make your choice. And you heard that from trusted pastors and parents, from peers and friends. It wasn't so easy or so clear what choice to make, especially for those who have committed, in my case, for high school, junior college, and suddenly you get to that point and say, look, you're either going to continue to follow the path or you're out. There was a split. We were out. The rest is sort of history, as they say, and led to other things. But I learned through that. And actually, I had learned earlier because I found myself making that same kind of decision in life over and over again, where you realize that you can't have it both ways. A friend sent me a quote this week. It's spring training time. He's an admirer of Yogi Berra. For those that remember that dates it a little bit. But one of Yogi's saying was, when you come to the fork in the road, take it. He wanted things both ways. I felt that way. I wanted things both ways, but I couldn't have them. And those kinds of decisions, I think, are sometimes we can point to those big decisions in life where we have to take that we can't have things both ways. We have to make a decision. Something's got to be given up, and something's got to be embraced. Somebody's got to be pleased, and somebody's going to be very angry with us. We're going to go closer to some and more distant from others, maybe even cut off. Formative to me in my younger years was I grew up in a small congregation. It's an example of what I'm thinking about. I was nurtured in that, and part of family, much of the extended family was distant, and that congregation was family. And when it came time for high school, to go off to boarding school. It was that congregation that stepped up with most of the money and said, if you're going to go study for the ministry, or at least consider that, we will support you all the way. And that support continued until I decided Indiana University was where I wanted to go, and then the seminary time. And then when I made my choice in that seminary thing, the congregation looked and said, we're sorry you're going to do that. Not only is there no support, but you are not welcome to come back and usher. It's one of the great privileges. Usher, much less preach, conduct worship. And so that congregation that still means a great deal to me and nurtured, I've never set foot to lead worship in that. And it's been all right. While part of me is sad about that, it opened up a whole new world and a whole new life. And a part of that I enjoy now. I often think back to those days and that kind of decision making, because it makes the little decisions in life easier. I chose what I thought that God wanted me to do. I did not understand. I certainly didn't even ever heard of Lily Lake in those days. I had no idea how things were going to play out. But God was there, and it did play out, and it did go well. I thought about that as we do our Lenten journey. One of the traditional disciplines of Lent is to reconsider our lives and our decisions. Where am I going and what am I up to? And what is God asking you to do this day? Is he asking you to go and talk to that enemy, to begin to make friends, to go back and forgive the hurts that have been a part of your life? Is he asking you to make a decision that you just can't comprehend what's there or what's going to come tomorrow? Or maybe I can understand it intellectually, but my heart just cannot go there. That's part of what I think Lent is all about. We sit down and begin to ask ourselves, what's God asking me to do this day? And am I allowing Jesus to take my hand and walk with me into tomorrow? Am I hearing the Holy Spirit that is calling me to do a specific act, to reach out to another in some way that I've never done before? It sounds very scary and threatening. That's a part of it. So in our gospel text today, I thought how much I could relate to the disciples. It's about halfway through their time with Jesus. It's exactly halfway through the Gospel of Mark. We know how the story ends, but they do not. And as we read the text, what I got in the picture, I got that Yogi Bear thing in mind, that they've come to the fork in the road, and they want it both ways. That's what I hear this saying, Jesus, we are going to follow you. We're all with you. We're all behind you. This is good. We want to learn more and follow you, but drop this talk about death. We don't want to hear about that. We don't want to hear about the pain and the suffering. You're better than that. We want to follow you, but let us tell you where you should lead. This is the first time that happens in Mark's Gospel, but it is not the last. And we're going to hear about 2 more times between now and Easter, and Jesus' death and resurrection. As it says in the text, the disciples did not yet understand. And I think for us in this journey, as I read that text, maybe put that not only in context, begin to say, what are the things that I do not understand? And do I trust Jesus to lead me into those things? That in his time and on his calendar, I will come to an understanding of what it means to follow Jesus, of new life, and to be a part of that. So I turn to Mark's Gospel. It comes from the 8th chapter, begins the 31st verse. Then he began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He said all this quite openly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan. You are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." He called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who will lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." Here ends our text. Jesus does walk with us, and I think one of the gifts is in the bread and wine, that knowledge that he comes to us. So as we share in communion, it's a good time to begin to think about not only Jesus coming to us with all of his forgiveness, but coming to us with the power that we can make the decisions to follow him this day.